what I was personally involved in was earlier than that, which was the time of the entry of the Syrian troops to Lebanon in the second or third year of the Lebanese Civil War. The then president of Lebanon requested help because there was a very difficult situation in the Zahli area between the Palestinian forces and the Lebanese forces. And that's, as I say, was my second mission, was to be in very close communication with the Syrians about the risks that were very clear to us because we were hearing about them from the Israelis, and it was no secret that the Israelis and the Syrians considered themselves enemies, and anything that could be interpreted as a Syrian ruse to attack through Lebanese territory, not the Golan Heights, but through the Bekaa or down further, would create a very dangerous, inflammatory situation. So there was a discussion of what was called the Red Lines Agreement, I believe, that when Secretary Kissinger was still in office, that should the Syrian government decide to move, it should observe some limits on this, and those limits affected aircraft in the south, close to the Israeli border, and the nature of heavy equipment coming in. And looking back, I think that the president and his advisors managed that very carefully, very cautiously. When they decided to send a force, they sent them to the border, not across. A day or so later, a small group passed over the border, then very deliberate movement. And it may be that those red lines that you referred to in the case of 1982, which would have been 7 years later, were still holding. But that didn't avoid an air battle in that conflict in 1982, I think, where Syria lost many of its aircraft in a battle over the country. Well, we were communicating. The Israelis would pass their views, and we would share them with the Syrians. They were not meeting secretly, but they trusted us to be reporting accurately the Israeli attitudes, and vice versa, back from Damascus to the defense ministry down in Tel Aviv.
الحادثة الأشهر بينكم وبين الرئيس حافظ أسد هي الحادثة التي أو الاجتماع الذي تمخض عنه اتفاق الأسد ميرفي، والذي أبلغته للبنانيين قائلا إما الضاهر أو الفوضى. كيف حدث هذا الاتفاق؟
I will never forget it. I don't think the Lebanese will ever allow me to forget the story. Well, the background of that was that my government was very concerned with the disintegration of the Lebanese government. The parliament had not had an election in several years. It was kept repeatedly being postponed because events were such that they weren't ready to hold it. And the presidency of Lebanon was the one institution that was still functioning. And the term in office of President Amin Jamal was to expire on schedule in September of 1988. So we did encourage all concerned to reach agreement on the Lebanese side so that the government, a new president could be elected in September. There'd been perhaps a dozen, 15 candidates from the Maronite community who were known to be interested in becoming president of Lebanon. Many of them made trips to Damascus to, I guess, persuade Damascus that they were the best qualified candidates. We had a lot of discussions with the Syrians about why we thought an election was important. They didn't share that sense in Damascus of urgency for the election. And the decision finally was made, well, if there has to be an election, let there be one candidate. And the name that came out was that of الضاهر. Now, I never met الضاهر for about 5 years after that, when I was visiting in Beirut, after I'd left the government. And I saw him a few weeks ago at a ceremony when there was a new building being inaugurated in Beirut at the American University. And we chatted briefly. He was not the American candidate. He was a name that the Syrians, for reasons which they never explained, came, and their attitude was, I think I said at one point, do you mean they would have no choice? And the answer was, if they have a choice, they will choose chaos. I don't think I myself publicly repeated that in Beirut, but it was said. And that phrase, الضاهر, out of chaos, came about, out of fawda. I've heard that interpretation. We gave Lebanon to Syria. We did not give Lebanon to Syria. And the Syrians overstayed in Lebanon. They made a contribution, there's no question, in the late 70s. The situation started to calm down. It didn't end. And the fighting, the civil war continued till 89 or 90. But they did make a contribution. But then they settled in, and they became comfortable being there, and their representative was up in the Bekaa Valley in an office there, and the Lebanese politicians were consulting with them about decisions affecting the Lebanese government. But no, that story, my Arabic studies included the proverb, "Fishi wara sitar," and there was always a conspiracy to explain a given situation. And it became the very clear formula, here is Lebanon, please Syria, take Lebanon, and just stay at peace with Israel. So, there's no truth to that. I don't think that the Syrians played a role in the taking of the hostages. In part, in some of the cases, they played a role in getting them released. And they had a channel of communication to Tehran, which was important in that regard. I mean, we had none. To the Iranians, we were the great Satan of the universe. Never in human history had there been as evil a power as the United States. I think, thank heavens, that mood seems to be less lessened over the last several years. But we had no communications, and the Syrians did have channels. It went very slowly. The effort to get the hostages, 5 or 6 in the group, it was a group, if you looked at the makeup of the group, there was a journalist, there was a Protestant minister, there was a dean of the faculty at the American University. They were not only of American nationality, but of various spheres of activity in America. And the message was, America, get out. In those days, Hezbollah had not become a formal organization, I think, when the first hostages were taken. But people who later became known as the Hezbollah leadership were assumed to be behind the kidnapping. It was one organization that seemed to control the hostages and decide on its release, their release. And it took one of them was held for 5 years. It was a wild time, a very brutal time in Lebanon. I mean, as we see savagery and brutality in Syria today, the Lebanese showed quite a bit of brutality themselves. Kidnappings for ransom, kidnappings for political reasons, indiscriminate killings. It never reached the size of the crisis in Syria today, but it was a pretty bloody and nasty affair in Lebanon that went for those 15 years.